Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going into, well, a pretty difficult topic.
Definitely a sensitive one.
Yeah, we're looking at some really uncomfortable allegations of anti-Black sentiment within certain Latino communities.
And we should be clear about our source here.
Right. Our deep dive today is based entirely on a transcript from a YouTube video. It's called "He Exposed How Latinos Sabotage Black Americans on Construction Jobs and Get Them Fired."
From the Pink Book Lessons channel.
Exactly. So our goal today, just to be upfront, isn't about taking sides. Not at all.
No, it's about understanding the perspectives shared in that specific source.
Right. We want to really unpack the experiences presented there so you, the listener, can get a more nuanced view of these, well, challenging narratives.
It's complex stuff.
It really is. We'll be looking at two main accounts from the source. Okay, so let's jump right into the first one.
Okay.
This comes from a Black man, and he owns a construction company. He talks about hiring Latino workers only for them to allegedly complain about his African-American employees and actively try to get them fired.
And the source gets specific about the why, doesn't it? It points right at economic competition.
Yeah, it does.
These workers, according to the account, explicitly wanted to replace the Black workers with, well, their own people.
They even named names, apparently, Jose and Gonzalez.
Describing them as, and this is a direct quote from the source material, "My brothers who know how to work very well."
And this wasn't just happening on, like, small side jobs either, right?
No. The source mentions significant sites. Quantico Marine Base in Virginia, for one.
Wow.
And also work as a contractor for General Electric. It's a big deal.
That is. Yeah, that's a powerful start. But here's where it gets particularly interesting, or maybe disturbing.
Okay.
The owner in the source claims these same workers tried to get him, an African man, the owner, to turn on his own Black American employees.
No. How did they supposedly try that?
The source suggests they used a kind of immigrant camaraderie pitch, trying to, appeal to him on that basis, perhaps.
So a direct attempt to leverage that connection to basically push out the Black workers.
That's how the source presents it. And it leads the owner to make this really stark comparison.
Yeah, I remember reading that part. It's quite direct.
He says, white Americans will work with African Americans who want to work, but Latinos will not work with African Americans who want to work.
And then asserts that Latinos only work with Latino. That's his conclusion based on his experiences.
Right. Leading him to state, in his view, that Latinos are more discriminatory and racist towards African Americans.
And the source notes the video itself was controversial,
Yeah.
right? People trying to get it removed.
Yeah, apparently. But the speaker just maintained he was, quote, speaking the obvious truth.
So very firm in his perspective.
Very. And the source doesn't stop at construction, does it? It suggests this isn't an isolated thing.
No, it broadens out. Claims that Latinos pack house. That's the term used.
Pack house, meaning?
Meaning they allegedly fill positions with their own people and limit hiring from outside the group.
Okay.
And this is claimed to happen in other fields too, like medical, dental, even management roles.
So the source paints a picture of a much wider pattern of preference.
That's the implication, yeah. It's a systemic issue from that perspective. So
faced with this alleged situation, particularly in construction, what's the solution offered in the source? What does the owner suggest?
It's very action-focused. He suggests Black men, specifically in cities like Miami and New York, need to organize.
So organize how?
Form groups, register their own labor force companies, and go after contracts directly.
Like bypass the existing structures where they feel locked out?
Essentially, yes. He throws out a number like 10 guys can team up and secure maybe a $500,000 contract.
Okay.
Framing it as a way to push back against those who, quote, don't want to lose their grip on the construction industry and want to completely lock men out.
It's a call for economic self-determination, in a way.
Exactly. And the source adds another layer, too, mentioning things like being in the U.S. on a visa or as a resident alien.
Implying that's a privilege with rules.
Yeah, and even brings up ICE rates.
Yep.
It sort of hints at the precarities some workers might face, maybe as a context for these dynamics, though it's not fully explored.
Right. Okay, so that's the first account focused on economics, jobs, alleged sabotage. Now let's pivot, because the source offers a very different kind of story, too.
A much more personal one.
Yeah, deeply personal. It's from a man identified as Puerto Rican and Dominican.
And he talks about racism and colorism, but within his own family.
Exactly. Which opens up a whole different angle on these intergroup or even intergroup tensions. What does he share?
Well, his story is really about how colorism can be internalized. He says he was the only one in his close family, cousins, siblings, aunts, uncles, who had his particular hair texture.
Kind of kinky or coily hair?
Yeah, this texture hair and this texture beard, he says, while everyone else had slick hair. And he remembers his uncle specifically.
What does Meekle say?
Told him he had pea hair, which is apparently a derogatory term for that hair type.
Oh, wow.
And as a kid, hearing that from family, it made him believe his hair was bad.
That's heartbreaking. And he carried that for a long time.
Seems so. He says it wasn't until he met his wife and actually learned about different hair textures that he understood.
Understood what?
That his family's comments weren't just teasing, they were rooted in racism. Internalized racism and colorism.
And he makes an observation about older generations too, doesn't he?
He does. He notes that, in his experience, older Hispanic people tend to be the most racist, which is, a generalization, but it reflects his personal encounters.
And the source tries to connect this personal story to wider cultural things.
Yeah, it does. It mentions, for instance, the term moyo,
What's that?
a derogatory word the source claims Puerto Ricans sometimes use for black people. So it links the family attitude to a broader cultural vocabulary of bias.
Okay.
And it also throws in references to other things, like accounts from the LA riots of people calling police the N-word. And even a controversial comment someone apparently made about America being only slightly better than Mexico. It sort of weaves his personal story into these larger charged references.
It paints a complex and, frankly, pretty bleak picture of bias.
Definitely. And it leads him to this really raw fear about his own kids.
Right, because his children are mixed.
Yeah, Hispanic and black. And he's worried his family might program them.
Program them how?
Repeat the same anti-black comments or behaviors towards them because the kids might now be seen as the blackest members of the family.
Oh, man.
Yeah. He says interactions need to be carefully monitored. It really highlights how these things can pass down through generations.
So you have these two accounts in the source. The construction owner talking about economic exclusion, job sabotage.
Right, perceived contempt even.
And then this second man talking about deeply personal colorism, family racism.
Yeah, both presented by the source as examples exposing, quote, anti-black Latinos. Two very different arenas, work and family, but pointing to a similar alleged prejudice.
So wrapping this deep dive up, we've looked at these two distinct narratives from the source material. They definitely shine a light on some deeply uncomfortable claims.
Allegations of anti-black sentiment, anti-black actions within parts of the Latino community, as presented in that specific YouTube video.
What's really fascinating, I think, is seeing how these accounts, as presented, link things like economic competition.
Yeah, the fight for jobs.
With personal bias, colorism, and maybe inherited cultural attitudes.
It really underscores the complex ways these things can intersect, both within communities and between them. It certainly challenges any simple assumptions about automatic group solidarity based on, say, shared ethnicity or language.
Absolutely. These stories suggest it's much more complicated than that.
Individual experiences, like the one shared in the source, can really pull back the curtain on broader social dynamics.
So as you, the listener, reflect on these specific accounts we've unpacked today, maybe think about how they resonate or don't with things you've seen or experienced.
How do identity and power and group dynamics play out in ways that maybe aren't always obvious?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other stories like these from all sorts of perspectives exist just under the surface, shaping people's lives and opportunities? Something to definitely keep thinking about.